In the year 1796, a new nation celebrated its hard-won liberty. Bells rang in Philadelphia, the temporary capital, and speeches filled the air with talk of rights, justice, and the birth of a republic founded on freedom. But inside the president's house, for one young woman, these words were a cruel irony. Her name was Ona Judge. At 22, she was the personal attendant and seamstress to Martha Washington, wife of the first president, George Washington. She was also his property. Day after day, Ona's needle moved with practiced grace, stitching silks and fine linens for the First Lady. Her hands, which could create such beauty, were not her own. She was surrounded by the symbols of American liberty, yet she was bound by the invisible chains of law and custom. In the quiet halls of the executive mansion, she listened. She heard the nation's most powerful men discuss the future of freedom, debating the very principles of human dignity. But those principles, she knew, did not extend to her. She was a possession, a line item in a ledger, her future determined not by her own will, but by her owners. Life in Philadelphia offered a fragile illusion of freedom. Pennsylvania laws stated that any enslaved person residing in the state for more than 6 months would be automatically manumitted or set free. The Washingtons were acutely aware of this law. To circumvent it, they engaged in a careful, clandestine rotation, sending their enslaved servants out of the state just before the 6-month deadline, only to bring them back to reset the clock. It was a legal loophole, a quiet, bureaucratic form of control that ensured their ownership remained absolute. Ona saw this deception for what it was. It wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a constant reminder of her precarious existence. She learned that her fate was about to be sealed. Martha Washington intended to give Ona as a wedding gift to her granddaughter, Eliza Park, Custis Law. For Ona, this was a death sentence for the soul. Eliza was known for her fierce and unpredictable temper. A transfer to her Virginia plantation meant a return to the brutal, unforgiving reality of plantation slavery, far from the relative autonomy she experienced in Philadelphia. It meant the end of any hope, however slim, of one day being free. The knowledge settled upon her not with a crash, but with a quiet, cold certainty. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no plea for mercy. She knew such appeals were futile. The Washingtons saw her not as a person with dreams and fears, but as an asset to be managed. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, a steely resolve began to form in the silence of her heart. She would not be given away like a piece of furniture. She would take her freedom herself. She began to plan, her mind working with the same precision as her needle. She sought help from Philadelphia's free black community, a network of souls who understood the risks and the rewards of what she was about to do. They were the unseen architects of liberty, building pathways to freedom in the shadows of a slave-owning society. They helped her secure passage on a ship, the Nancy, captained by a man named John Bowles, bound for Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The moment came on a quiet evening in May. The Washingtons were preparing to return to their Mount Vernon plantation for the summer. The house was a whirlwind of activity, trunks being packed, schedules being arranged. Amidst the chaos, Ona saw her opportunity. While the president and his family ate their dinner, she gathered her few belongings, slipped out of the house, and disappeared into the twilight-dusted streets of Philadelphia. There were no tearful goodbyes. No final, defiant glances. Just the soft sound of her footsteps on the cobblestones, moving away from the house of the most powerful man in America and toward an uncertain future. Each step was a quiet rebellion. She walked past the State House, where the Declaration of Independence had been signed, its promise of unalienable rights still echoing in the air. For the first time, those words felt like they might belong to her, too. As she made her way to the docks, the city lights blurred behind her, and the dark, open water of the Delaware River beckoned. It was the terrifying, beautiful face of freedom. The ship sailed under the cover of darkness. With every mile that separated her from Philadelphia, the chains of her old life began to rust and fade. She arrived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a free woman. But freedom, she would soon discover, was not a destination. It was a constant struggle. Back in Philadelphia, her absence was quickly discovered. George Washington was incensed. It was not just the loss of valuable property that angered him. It was the personal betrayal, the sheer audacity of her escape. He, the leader of the free world, had been outsmarted by his wife's seamstress. It was an affront to his authority, to his very sense of order. He was determined to get her back. But Washington had to act carefully. A public scandal about the president's runaway slave would be deeply embarrassing, undermining his image as a benevolent patriarch. So he used his vast network of influence, acting not as a president, but as a private citizen. He placed discreet newspaper ads, offering a reward for the capture of Ona Judge. He wrote to his contacts in New Hampshire, deploying federal officials for his personal business, urging them to find her and persuade her to return. In August of 1796, Joseph Whipple, Portsmouth's collector of customs, located Una. He did not arrest her. Instead, he tried to convince her to go back voluntarily. He painted a picture of a benevolent master, willing to forgive her transgression if she would only return to Mount Vernon. Ona listened, her heart pounding, but her resolve unbroken. She told Whipple she would not return to a life of slavery. She said she was free now, and she intended to stay that way. Washington was relentless. A few years later, he sent his own nephew, Burwell Bassett Jr., to New Hampshire with a direct order: seize Ona Judge and her young child and bring them back by force if necessary. Bassett found Ona, and he tried a different tactic. He offered her a deal, a proposition that must have seemed, on its surface, like an incredible act of mercy from the most powerful man in the country. He told her that if she agreed to return to Mount Vernon, the Washingtons would grant her freedom in their will upon their deaths. Think of the weight of that offer. The promise of freedom, guaranteed by the President of the United States, for a woman living in poverty, constantly looking over her shoulder. It must have been a powerful temptation. It was a path to security, to a life without the constant fear of capture. But Ona Judge understood something profound about the nature of power. She saw the trap hidden within the promise. Freedom that is given can also be taken away. A promise is not the same as a right. She told Bassett she would not return. She explained that she was free now. She would not trade her present liberty for a future promise. No matter who made it, she had seized her own freedom. She would not accept it as a conditional gift. Furious at her refusal, Bassett planned to abduct her that night. But once again, Ona was one step ahead. Warned by local allies, she and her family fled into the New Hampshire countryside, vanishing before he could act. Ona Judge was never captured. She lived the rest of her life in New Hampshire, poor and always in the shadows, but free. She outlived George and Martha Washington by decades. In an interview late in her life, she was asked if she had any regrets. She said she did not. She was unapologetic for taking the freedom that was hers by right. Her story is not one of violent uprising. It is a story of quiet intelligence, of immense courage, and of an unshakable understanding of what freedom truly means. George Washington, the father of a nation, died a slave owner. Ona Judge, the woman who stitched his wife's dresses, died a free woman. Her life is a haunting question mark at the end of America's founding story, a testament to the idea that true liberty is not something that can be granted or offered. It must be claimed, and once claimed, it must never be surrendered. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as powerful as we did, please like, subscribe, and share. History is full of forgotten voices, and it's our mission to bring them to light.